Welcome. Who is excited to get down to it? Look at you guys just continuing to show up, continuing to get it, get at it. It is good to be with you. Welcome. Do you like my shirt? There's teacups on it. So cute. Who doesn't like a teacup? Come on now. Remember in the 80s when women were working in the workforce for the first time and they had to wear suits and shoulder pads, but now we can be like super cute and do all things, whatever you want, you know what I'm saying? All right, so we are gonna dive into some good stuff today. Yeah, my hair is doing something good today. My hair, isn't it amazing? It's the same hair, but it just, some days it does what it wants and some days you're the boss, you know what I'm saying? So does everybody have with them a pencil or pen and a sheet of paper? That would be a good thing to do. Grab that. And water. Stay hydrated, right? Stay hydrated. My cup actually says stay wild. Stay wild, right? As much as you want to be together and have it together, the spontaneity is the joy, is the fun. And that's actually where all the magic happens. It's like you do the things you do to prep and then you let go. And that's where actually all the magic lives. So today we're going to talk more about money. And we're going to talk about you making money. And we're going to talk about how on earth is this actually finally 100% with certainty happening for you now? Because this is something that is, it's very exciting, right? Because it's an activator, right? When money comes into our life, there is a feeling of permission, right? There's a feeling of freedom. There's a feeling of liberation where you get to make a lot of choices. In fact, I asked Gretchen Rubin, who wrote a bunch of books on happiness. She has a podcast on happiness. And I asked her, is it true that money makes people happier? And she said, it's not the money, it's the freedom it allows, right? And when you have that freedom, you get to make choices. And that's what's so exciting. And there really isn't a good reason not to do that, right? Because we are the creator of our experience. We are the deliberate creator of our experience. And as we go through the next 3 days, we are going to talk about all of my favorite topics. One of them is going to be manifestation. But the other piece of it is going to be, what does it mean to take inspired action? And what are the things that you can be having fun doing, right? With your creativity. Because I will tell you, one of the main reasons I love teaching women how to grow a business is because it is so much fun to have a project, right? Type a 1 in the chat if it's so much fun when you're busy with a project that lights you up, that excites you, especially if it uses your gifts, right? Like that makes time disappear completely. And the truth is, we all know that we're on our phones way too often. And so I said this yesterday. If you were with us yesterday on Sunday, type a 2 in the chat if you were with us yesterday, because that was really impressive, you guys. Showing up on a weekend. But I said this yesterday that people used to have this excuse called, I don't have time. And unfortunately, we've all become zombies to the phone. And we now know that the average phone user is on the phone 6 hours a day. That's average. Most people, their screen time is 10 hours. So that's terrifying. And what I want to say is my contention is that if you were to take 45 minutes a day, 90 minutes a day, you could build a significant side hustle by focusing on what the right things are to do. And then soon that side hustle will turn into a really extensive, delicious, profound, amazing project. And to not do that, not only is it keeping you from something that could really be fulfilling, but it's so boring to scroll your phone. It's not interesting. You're not using your mind. We talked about this earlier in the workshop that Gay Hendricks talks about the big leap. And the big leap is getting beyond your zone of excellence and getting into your zone of genius. And the truth is that most people, when they're really, really happy, it's when they're doing something in flow state, in their zone of genius, where they're solving a fun problem. You know, my family, we've gone to this escape room. We've gone to every one of the escape rooms. We've even done one of them twice, right? And we're waiting for them to bring a new room because we've done all these rooms. So sometimes we'll drive to a different location and try to go to different rooms. Now we've gone to all the rooms that are somewhat within reasonable distance. Why is that fun? Because it is so fun to give your mind a fun problem to solve. In fact, it's so stimulating that it's almost like a meditation, right? When you're trying to get a knot out of a necklace, or you are busy fiddling with something, you might resist it at first, but then once you do it, it actually quiets your mind. When you're scrolling your phone, that is actually the thing that makes you the least happy. That is the thing that actually, it's like fake fulfillment. It's like when somebody says, oh, do you want some Skittles or you want some candy? And then 10 minutes later, you're really regretting that you ate that candy because you don't feel filled up at all. That's what dopamine does, right? You just keep getting addicted to the dopamine of the phone, but really what you want is the fulfillment and the stimulation of leaning into something that truly takes your mind to a whole different place. And it's good for your endorphins, it's good for your brain. And really, our brain is so powerful and we don't use it. Like, our brain will solve problems. That's what it's meant to do. And instead of solving problems, it gets bored and it festers, and then it obsesses over itself and it nitpicks itself to death, which creates depression. And so starting a business, there's so many good reasons to start a business, but one of the really nice reasons is because you can make money. And we live in a time in 2024 where on the other side of clicking a button, you can find buyers for whatever it is that you want to sell. And the fact that you don't have an answer right now to what your business is or what's going to get you the next 100 grand in your business. How many of you, let's see if we can like do a little bit of like level setting here. How many of you just say me if you have a business, right? How many of you have a business? Just say no if you don't. And how many of you would like to have your own passive or real income doing something you love? Would you like to be making 100 grand a year doing something that you love? Type of 1 if you would like to do that. If you're one of those people who says that you have a business, what is the next revenue goal for you? Like, do you want to go from, are you already at 100 grand? Do you want to go from 6 figures to 7 figures? Do you want to go from your first 5 customers to your first $10,000? What is your next revenue goal? Okay, cool. So I want to actually start with this for everybody who's here, whether you have a business or you don't have a business. I want you to take out a pencil, preferably a pencil. You know why I love pencils? They have erasers. And this is the way that you make business amazing. This is the way that you make life amazing, is you allow yourself to keep editing it, to keep iterating, to keep pivoting. That is actually the best way to have fun, and the best way to make something incredible is to keep allowing it to be a live, living, breathing entity. So if you have a pen, fine, pen and pencil. I want you to take out a blank sheet of paper, because to me, there's nothing more exciting than looking at a blank sheet of paper. You know why? Because when you look at a blank sheet of paper, you realize, so obvious, everything is possible. This is where all possibility exists, right? Nothing has been predetermined. There are no limitations. You get to decide what you're going to put on this blank piece of paper. And that is literally the way that your life is. We live in a universe that is truly so abundant, and an ecosystem that is so incredibly powerful. It moves everything into wholeness. It's just designed to repair and restore and to connect itself to what really allows it to have the most energy. It's unbelievable, and it's potent, and it's a playground. And when you start to understand that your thoughts turn to things, and that you are the deliberate creator of your experience, and that you can come up with incredible ways to make your brain work for you and to pull out from within you your resources, you realize that you have the capacity to do all the things that you set for yourself to do. So I want you to take out this blank piece of paper and a pencil or a pen, and I need you to have, and I want you to write it at the top, my big sexy goal. Your big sexy goal, okay? So write down big, sexy goal, okay? Write that at the top of your page, okay? And now underneath that, let's just play with it, okay? what would be, we're talking about money, right? We're going right into the belly of the beast. We're going to spend 3 days talking about money and generating money and business and manifestation of money and dealing with money blocks, all things money is what we're talking about for 3 days. When you look at this big, sexy goal, and I want you to just close your eyes for a second, and I want you to ask yourself, if I had to come up with a number, right, that over the course of 12 months, this time next year, what would be my big, sexy goal in money? What would be my money goal? Big, sexy goal. I want it to excite you. I want it to inspire you. I want you to think of all the amazing things that you can do with it, how you can enjoy it, how you can serve with it. What is a big, sexy goal? And then I want you to write it on the page. What would be a big, sexy goal? Write it on the page. Okay. So we have 50K, 75K, 500K, 300K. Exciting. So I'm just curious. There's no right answers. There's no wrong answers. We just get curious. What is it about this number that made you choose it? I just want to hear from you. Why did you choose that number, right? When we said there's a blank page, right? I wrote 12 million. When you have a blank page and you have a pen, you can write whatever you want. So why'd you write that? Okay, so the answers that are coming in are, I can do that. It seems like it's almost possible. It'd be less stressful. I would love to make $80,000. It's twice as much as I made last year. It's what came to me. It felt big. It felt infinite. I can get rid of my safety net job. It felt attainable. It's the number that came to me. So here's what I want to already point out, okay? I want to already point out that when I say big, sexy goal, your brain adjusts for what I just said. I said big, sexy goal, and you told me most probable, most attainable. Type of 1 if you see what I just said. So that's already fascinating, okay? Because what is built into that is an unconscious mind that is telling you all the time to make decisions based upon the past, to make decisions based upon what's probable and not what's possible. And that's already a ceiling. Do you see that? So, you know, a few years ago, we had a friend our age who needed a bone marrow transplant. And that was very scary. And his wife and his friends decided that it was as good as done, that they were going to find a match. And they began their process, and they found out that he had a very distinct blood type. And they had this big, sexy goal, and they made a decision that this was as good as done. And so they reverse engineered this being, what is it, if this is a fait accompli, what is it that we are going to do to begin with the end in mind, that this goal is done, we are doing this. So what are all the things that we can do to be resourceful to make this goal come to life? And what they wound up doing is they wound up reaching out to people who were famous, who had Instagram accounts and Twitter accounts, and they had people post on their behalf. They canvassed, they did every kind of cool thing they could do. They put on concerts, they gathered people in the most incredible ways. And do you think if they found a match for him? Well, I'm going to tell you something. Not only did they find a match for him, they found matches for 8 people. They found matches for 8 people. So when I tell you that you can make money, right? And you can make money doing something you love, it's fascinating, right? Because your brain is hardwired into whatever evidence it tells you it can find, right? It has its own algorithm. So it searches your brain for what role models you have that have ever done that, what's happened to you in the past, what have you achieved, what have you failed at, and then it spits out what they think, what your brain thinks is probability. If I were to tell you that finding a bone marrow match for someone with this distinct blood type was something that someone had to do, well, at that moment, they're not going to think about probability because it's a decision, because there is no other choice. because it's going to happen. And I'm going to tell you that when I moved to Los Angeles at the age of 23, because I didn't have parents that were going to be able to support me, and that wasn't even an option for me, then there was no other path. There was no other path. I paid for my way to go to college, and I'm glad that I did. I worked 3 jobs in college, and I learned so much at those jobs. I worked for a girl who had cerebral palsy. I took care of her. I was the editor of my college paper, which paid me really well. I worked as a hostess at Roadhouse Grill, which they have really good sweet tea. And I have just built for myself a capacity to actually enjoy it, right? I actually do enjoy it. In fact, I don't think human beings are meant to sit by themselves alone on their couch scrolling their phone. I think that we are meant to enjoy whatever it is that we're doing and find how to connect to people with wherever we're at, and actually makes life really fun. And making money is a blast, right? Because if you're good at making money, it means you're good with people, because everything is a people's game. None of it has to do with numbers. And you get really resourceful and you figure things out. And so if it's a fait accompli that this is going to happen, then you start to be the captain of your own ship. Because if you are in charge of your mind and you tell your mind, no, we are doing this, your mind will actually give you a totally different readout from the algorithm. But when you're in your unconscious mind is not going to allow you to get beyond the reef. Type of 1, if you get that. So when it comes to what the goal is, right? I'm going to ask you again. What's your big, sexy goal? What's your big, sexy goal for yourself? Right? And now, isn't it amazing? Okay, 1 million, 5 million, 963,000, 14 million. Tell me in the chat, just reading this, how does that feel? How does it feel to read it? How does it feel to even just read other people saying these things? How does it feel to even just read it? Amazing, love it, incredible, right? Of course. Why? I mean, I'm serious. Why do you like even reading other people's big, sexy goals? And isn't it interesting? There's a part of our brain that doesn't want to put it out there because we almost think that people will judge us, and there's this hesitation. It's the opposite. Everyone just felt ignited and inspired. Type of 1 if you felt that, hands down. Why is that? Because we're all sick of living inside a limitation. And so when somebody else pulls the lid off of it, it actually all of a sudden ignites that for us. In fact, let me explain something. The way that brains work is they have mirror neurons. So when you're looking at someone else, are you seeing them, or are you seeing yourself? You're seeing yourself. It's actually all a projection, right? Which is why if you love someone and someone says it takes one to know one, they're right. And if you don't like someone, it's because they're reflecting something in yourself that you don't like. It's all about us. That's how the brain works. This is why if you watch a movie and you sit down and you watch Devil Wears Prada, you are Anne Hathaway as you watch that movie, and everything that's happening to her, you're experiencing it in your body as if it's happening to you. Okay, so when somebody else is actually out there, putting themselves out there, it's the opposite, right? They're actually excited. You're igniting for them what's possible. When I tell you that I moved down here at 23 and I started to hustle, and I'm going to go through a little bit of that story today. And I started building different businesses, and I made my first 100 grand, right? And I bought myself my first little Mercedes coupe. And then I made my first 300 grand. And then I made my first million. And then I made 5 million. Like, that should be exciting to you. You should be seeing, oh, right, another human being has gone before me and told me the road up here is actually beautiful and you can make it up this hill. Okay. And I'm one of like so many people who set out, right, to do exactly that. I think what makes it a little bit different is I'm in a smaller group of people who've done it with the same fait accompli around the idea that I will only make this money doing something that I love, right? I will not sell my soul in exchange for it. I will do something that I love. And then you know what your brain does? It works for you all over again, and it shows you evidence that there are so many people from the beginning of time, if you really look, who've been able to make a living doing what they love. In fact, there's an incredible book called Real Artists Don't Starve, and it talks about Michelangelo, and it talks about how Mozart and people who did things they loved were the best paid people in society, and it's still that way today. And it's just a story, right? It's a story that gets passed down, that it's this or that. You either make money doing something that makes you unhappy, or you starve doing something you love. None of that is true. It's actually not true. It's unbelievable that your brain will find evidence to tell you what's true based on what you tell it, right? If you say to yourself, people that live in Los Angeles are superficial, your brain will go, yeah, that's true, and give you the evidence that it's true. But if you say to yourself something different, like people that live in Los Angeles are change makers, it'll give you that evidence. If you say to yourself, people that live in Los Angeles are really spiritual and they're into eating organic, it'll give you that evidence. It's whatever you tell it, right? And so what we need to start to understand is we are being lulled into sleep by a brain that's not turned on. It's literally like turning the radio to static and you can't hear anything. Okay, so we're gonna have a big sexy goal. Now, what's the next step? I'm contending, my hypothesis is that you can do something that you love and you don't ever have to work a day in your life because it doesn't feel like a job, right? You're getting paid to do something that you love. So for years, I taught a program called Made to Do This. Type of 1 if you were in that program. And stay tuned because we're doing some fun things today. There'll be some giveaways today, and I'm excited for that. But I did a program for years called Made to Do This. And what we did in that program is we taught women how to go from idea to income in 12 weeks. And that is an incredibly fulfilling experience because you start out with not even having a sense of clarity on your idea. And by the end, you make your, that when people make their first dollar and they frame it in the restaurant or mailbox store or whatever, you get to that place and you realize you did the hardest part, right? The hardest part is getting what's called proof of concept, okay? Once you have proof of concept, what do you do from there? You scale it, right? Every single business, it doesn't matter if it's the coffee shop down the street or if it's Nike or Coca-Cola. You ever go to the Coke Museum in Atlanta? It's pretty cool, but every single business starts with one customer. First customer, right? And why is that so exciting? Because when you have one satisfied customer one time, and they're satisfied, and they just paid you, and you just had a transaction, right? And from that transaction, they felt satisfaction. We are now being given the keys to build that as big as we want, right? So if you take pictures for somebody and you shoot your first wedding and they're happy, that's it, right? You now have this testimonial. You now have this satisfied customer. Now we're going to build that business as big as you want. And then along the way, right, we can hit different roadblocks when we forget all over again how to be resourceful, right? And how to scale a business. Because successful people don't work in their business for a long time. They work on their business. You start out working in your business. Everybody does. They play every part. And then eventually, what do? You work on your business. You become the drone view that's looking at how you can scale and how you can not be the bottleneck, but how you can take that idea and continue to give that idea to more people who want that exact same thing. So in Made to Do This, we used to talk about what could be your offer, right? And we talked about it based upon what I believe are the 5 categories of what people can do for a living, right? And I know this I wrote a book about this, but I've interviewed almost 900 people on my podcast. And after interviewing 900 people, I put them into 5 buckets based upon what it was that they did. And the thing about my podcast is the prerequisite for coming on the podcast is that for 5 years, the show was called Don't Keep Your Day Job. Now the show is all about abundance, but it was all about creativity and getting paid to do what you love, right? And by the way, every business owner is creative. Even if you don't think you're creative, if you're creating a logo, you're creative, right? If you're owning a business, in order to come up with problems and solutions to those problems, you need to actually be creative. So we looked at all the people that I've interviewed and we're like, okay, they all go into 5 buckets. Here are the buckets, okay? When you're creating a business, these are the things that you can do. You can make something. What does that mean? Well, you can make a product, right? You can make your own furniture. You can make jewelry, right? You can make soap, okay? You can make things. You can teach things. That's the second bucket. Some people teach things. They teach courses. They do some kind of coaching, right? What's the next thing? Services. You can have a service that you do, right? You cut somebody's hair. You do somebody's landscaping. You organize people's closets, right? What else can you do? You can create, you can create a business just based on curiosity alone, right? So those are people who create content. Those are people whose business is creating podcasts, writing books, exploring different things, right? So there's 5 different things. Does anyone know what the 5th one is? We went through making things, okay? Teaching things, services. Exactly. Tiffany, you're so good. The last one is curating things, because some people, you're the kind of person who you don't want to make the thing. You don't want to take the pictures. You're not the photographer, but you want to curate, right? You want to curate a gallery show for photographers, or you might not be a comedian, but you want to curate an evening of comedy, or you might not write the book, but you want to edit the book. That's a curator, right? So Emma, who works as my podcast producer, she's a curator. My husband's a lawyer. He wants to, he's also a comedian on the side, but as a lawyer, what is he doing? He's kind of editing, right? He's taking somebody's business and he's a part of helping consult to that business. That's a little bit of like curating what someone else is making. Okay. So which one of those things do you think that you might lean into? Do you like to make things? Do you like to teach things? Do you like to have some kind of service that you do, right? Are you doing something that makes you curious, that you are just investigator? We call the curiosity person an investigator. They get paid to investigate and to collect information. And the last one's a curator. So in my journey, right, I started out as a maker. And what did I make? Who knows? Who knows this? A lot of you already know my story. I started out, I wrote songs, right? So if you look back in like the Google search of Cathy Heller, you'll see an article about me in Billboard magazine that was like a full page. And there was an article in the Variety magazine that was a full page. And there was an article in the LA Weekly that was a full page. Why? Because I was writing music, right? And I was licensing those songs. So I was selling songs to TV shows and commercials and ad agencies and movie studios and all of that kind of thing, trailers. So I would make a song. I would go to the studio and write a song, and then I would pitch a song. And so I had a B2B business, right? So I was selling music straight to Paramount, straight to Netflix, straight to Ogilvy and Mather, straight to Leo Burnett, McDonald's. That was my business. I did that for 10 years. On the side, I went through a certification and I was training in mindfulness, and I started leading little groups where I was teaching meditation. And that, I guess you could say, was me teaching, right? I was teaching classes in mindfulness and meditation on the side because it was just something I found like an extra pet. It was like a pet project. And then after that, I became even more of a teacher because my music business was so successful, and because it was written about in a bunch of different magazines, other artists would come to me and say, can you teach me how to do this? And I'm going to tell you something right now, which somebody said to me, and it's 100% true. For everything that you can make or do, there's a line around the block of people who want to know how you do that. So write that down. For everything that you can make or you can do, there's a line of people that want to know how. So if you yourself are good at karate, people want to know how. If you yourself are good at writing music, people want to know how. If you yourself are good at cutting hair, people want to know how. So what I realized was I started a class. I actually was very resistant, you guys. I was very resistant to starting this class because when people would tell me to teach songwriters how to license music the way that I was doing it, I felt insulted at first. I felt like, well, do you know me? I'm a good songwriter. If you don't think I'm a good songwriter, just say it. And they're like, no, it's an extra thing. And what I realize is that's another way that our brain plays small, because successful people are usually multi-hyphenate. So write that down. You actually don't have to choose one. You can actually be many things. In fact, most multimillionaires do multiple things. They own businesses, then they do this creative project, then they do this other thing, then they invest in other people's businesses, it's unbelievable. Because once you start becoming the person who can manage your own mind, there's no end to what you can do. You realize that your capacity is so much beyond what you thought. So I started in my living room a class teaching songwriters how to license music. And I would teach them what kind of songs to write. And I would teach them how to pitch songs. And I would teach them the business part. And I would teach them the music part. And I did a few of those in my living room and people loved it. And then I thought, well, what am I going to do next if I want to grow it? And I got resourceful, because our greatest resource is our own resourcefulness. Write that down. I said that to you earlier last week. Write it down again. Our greatest resource is our own resourcefulness. So I decided I'm going to rent a theater, and if I rent the theater during the day, it's available, right? Because theaters in LA, there's so many of them, but they're only being used at night. So I found a small theater that fits 100 people. I think it was actually 99 seats. And it was $50 an hour. And I rented it for 3 hours and I sold the seats for $100. And I wound up making 10 grand. And I was like, wow, that was pretty cool. So I did that again. And after a year of that, a friend of mine said, you should start a class online. And again, I had an unconscious block. I said, I don't want to do something online. And my whole brain gave me all this evidence why doing anything online would be the grossest, sleaziest, most disgusting thing I could ever do. And I pictured, you know, those ads on YouTube where there's a guy in front of a jet and he's like, come be with me, I'll teach you how to make billions. And I was like, that's so gross, I'm not going to do that. And so I resisted that for a while until finally I was like, hang on a minute. I use the internet. Other people that are nice people use the internet. Why can't I just be myself on the internet? It's just a tool. I'm just going to still be myself. And so as some of you know, like I show up online, I just do it like me. I don't use slideshows. I don't have fancy schmancy funnels. That's not my thing. I just am myself. And so I put up a class online. I hadn't ever done it before. And I did a free class for songwriters on how to license music. And for 6 weeks before, I told everybody I was going to do this class. And I didn't even have an Instagram account or an email list, but I just told everybody. And people showed up for this class. And again, I'm very resourceful. So I reached out to different places whom I thought might have people who want to learn. So I reached out to UCLA Music School. I reached out to the Musicians Institute. I called some of the places around LA where I used to perform as a songwriter. And I said, hey, you have a list of songwriters who do your open mics and do the evening shows. Tell them I'm doing a class. And they're like, okay. They sent it like as a newsletter. So a lot of people came to the free class. And at the end of the class, I offered an online class that would be just on Zoom with me for $1,000, and 147 people bought it. I made 147 grand in that day. And I said, that's really interesting. So I started that class. And then one of my students said, you should start a podcast. And I said, I don't know how to do that, but I'm kind of interested in it. And next thing I know, my daughter was born. I got even more fearless. I started a podcast, and I started the podcast. And then the podcast grew, and then the podcast started making money right away. And I thought, this is so crazy. So then I was making music still. I was teaching a class to songwriters. I was the investigator, right? Because I was starting the podcast, which was just me being curious. And then I started curating, because I started to do two things. I started to license the music of people in my class. I became their agent. I was helping them. And then on top of it, I started doing events where I would bring people who had different kinds of jobs, and we would do panel discussions. And so I was the maker, teacher, investigator, curator, all at once. And the only thing I guess I've never done is the services part, because I've never done a service. Like, I guess that's the kind of thing I haven't done. And it was so much fun. And I turned around and I was like, holy shit, I have 3 kids at this point. And I have built all of this with the tenacity and courage and enthusiasm to say, why can't I? Right? So write that down. Why can't I? Why can't I do this? And as you build these businesses, you realize that if somebody is good at something one time, you might be able to throw shade at them and say, well, they just got lucky. But if somebody is good at building a bunch of different businesses, and their music business becomes successful, their podcast becomes successful, their courses become successful, then you have to, at that point, realize there is a pattern to the way that they approach their business. And it's the kind of thing that's called repeatable. It's repeatable, right? And so I have now been standing here and putting it out like a bat signal to every woman that I have met over the course of my journey, and said, of course you can do this, right? So write that down. Of course you can do this. Of course you can do this. So the big deal is the first 90 days. Okay. The first 90 days is the big deal because in the first 90 days, you have to do that really scary thing called putting it out there. You have to put the idea out there and you have to do this thing, write it down, test it. You have to test it. Right. And so if you think back in my journey, what I shared, that first class that I did a few times in my living room, that was me testing my class. Right. I didn't start with the online course. I started in my living room. Right. And with my music, it was the same thing. My first 45 songs were just really mediocre. And that was a test, right? I was getting better at writing music. And even that whole journey was also interesting because I wound up trying to get an agent first to license my music. And then my music would just sit around and no one would do anything. And I would call the agent and I was like, help me help you. How can you pitch me more? And I realized nobody's thinking about you because they have a roster of clients. The only person who thinks about you as much as you is your mom. Okay. But if your mom's not going to be your agent, you got to do it yourself. And so I took it into my own hands and I wound up, and this is part of why I started teaching it. I wound up realizing that everybody's a phone call away. Everybody's a DM away. Everyone, literally everyone from Mark Cuban to Serena Williams, like everyone. And at that point, I wasn't even using Instagram. We didn't even have that, but we had email. And so I started to do my own research and find out who were the people choosing music at different TV shows, who were the people, and I would literally shake, be a little bit nervous, and pick up the phone and call an ad agency in Chicago and ask to speak with the music supervisor. And it wasn't fun. It was scary. But I used to remember, fortune favors the brave. Like on the other side of this phone call, there's an opportunity. Why am I going to let myself be scared and bow out? And then I realized that there was a whole method to cold calling and cold pitching and how I could right away stop talking about myself and just start asking them questions. Hey, I'm a songwriter. What project are you working on? What can I help you with? What stories do you need told? What music have you used in the past? What kinds of things are you looking for? How can I be helpful? And I realized that people loved that. They absolutely loved that. And I realized that it wasn't my job to be pitching or be impressive, but just ask questions and try to help people with what they were needing. And people loved it. And next thing I knew, it was very, very easy. And people would say, oh, well, right now I'm looking for a song about blank. And then I heard the same comment over and over. People would say, you're the first person to ask me what I need as opposed to pitch me something you have. And I realized that that was the turning point because most people are calling and they want to go into their elevator pitch and you have no idea if the other person is interested. And what's more helpful is to back up and to not yet feel like you know the answer and ask the question, what do you need? And then you ask, and there were many times where I would say to them, you know what, I don't write music like that, but I know somebody who does. So let me connect you with my friend. She writes hip hop. Let me connect you with my friend. She does this kind of music. She does that. And then I would get this reputation. They're like, you're so nice. Thank you so much. And I just basically made friends learning how I could help supply what it was that people needed. And then it was really like shooting fish in a barrel because they would say, hey, we're doing an ending song for Switched at Birth. And we need a song about sisters. And I'm like, okay, I'll write that. And then I would go write the song and then send it to them. And my friends in the business were saying to me, how are you getting all these songs licensed? And I'm like, well, I don't send them my record and ask them to back themselves into my record. I write songs for them. And they're like, oh, I never would have thought of doing that. Right. And it was like, I was the only person doing that. It was very weird. Like it was insane to me, actually, that was the case. And then I thought, why would I go spend money on a whole record, not knowing if these songs are going to get licensed, right? Like the songs that would get licensed were the songs that they needed. People were writing songs about Tennessee and their girlfriend named Valerie, and then they want to send it to Target. Well, Target's got to look at their ad and say, is this ad shot in Tennessee? Like you have to first find out what do they need, and then you write the song to what they need. So it was totally a blast. And then when I started the podcast, I just applied the same principles. What does my audience need? What's my audience's pain point? How do I make them feel seen? Same thing with the guests. Instead of trying to be impressive to my guests and over prepare, how about be listening? How about actually ask questions? How about really listen and be willing to pivot and not stay on your agenda because they might be telling you a different story? There is so much in this, right? And then when I started the online course, I realized that when they zig, you can zag. And in the sea filled with a lot of mediocrity, you can actually stand out when you really care. So when you think about what's happening for you over the next year, I am telling you something that your brain might not tell you. You can set a big, sexy goal, and then you can reverse engineer that goal. And even if you don't hit the goal, by the way, that's not even the point, what will happen on your way there? And if you surrender, and we'll talk about this later on in the class, and you kind of play with what it means to manifest, you will have so much fun on your way to that goal, and you will be led to so many other things, as I talk about in my new book. Like, we're always pining for this red door, right? This thing that we want. But on our way to the red door, a yellow door opens and another yellow door opens. And those doors are just calling for us to walk through. And they're even better than the red door, right? It's like my husband, when I wrote down all the things that I was looking for, I was basically looking for a mixture of like Patrick Dempsey from Grey's Anatomy and Harry Connick Jr. and Matthew McConaughey, right? And I just realized that I've interviewed Harry Connick and Matthew McConaughey, but not Patrick Dempsey. I need to get on with that. My team needs to get him on my show. In any case, who he turned out to be was none of those things, right? Because there's something even better that we want, that we can't even dream of wanting, because it's beyond. It's the reason why when something really fun happens, you go, it took my breath away. It was beyond, you won't believe what happened, because there is a ceiling to how far you can dream. And the best things that happen are even better than what you can dream. Because imagine me being married to an actor, right? At the end of the day, would that really be fun? Probably not. Okay, so there's only room for one star in a relationship, guys. Anyways, the point is, you're going to set a goal for yourself, and you're going to then work towards that goal. And the very best part is who you become working towards a goal. So I want to ask you right now, as we've been talking about this, first of all, does this excite you? Does it excite you to think about building something towards a really big, sexy goal? Yes, it does. Awesome. So that's really fun, because I want you to do it. And secondly, I'm curious, from the time we started talking till now, do you have a big, sexy goal? Like, I know that we wrote down a number, but when you got on this Zoom call, do you have a big project? Do you have something really big and juicy and fun? I want you to have it. So I want you to now tell me, right? Maybe it's one of those 5 things, because I contend that every single woman should have her own checkbook. You should be able to put your hand on 100 grand whenever you want to. Can I get a hell yes on that? You should not ever have to ask permission from anyone to do the things that you want to do. This, by the way, is not a luxury. This is a necessity. And if you're scrolling your phone 6 hours a day, or even 3 hours a day, I'm going to be that friend who's going to be tough with you and say, you need to spend that time making that 100 grand happen. It's not okay. I talked about this yesterday on Sunday. My dad walked out when I was a kid. He left us with literally nothing. It was awful. And I made a decision right then and there, that will never be me. And I wound up marrying a really nice person. And you know what? I do wear the financial pants in the family, because even though I'm married to a nice person, he's a person who got scared about spending a lot of money. He grew up with no money. He has a sister who has Down syndrome. They really struggled. They had a lot of issues, and I get it. There was a lot of fear and a lot of sweetness and a lot of just trying to be super, 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 super humble and scrappy. But you know what? I want my kids in a really good school. And you know what? I want to be able to say yes to them when there's something that they need, and I don't want to have to think about it. And I do want a big backyard. We hosted a huge philanthropic dinner on Saturday night. I literally at this point feel like my house is a venue. We host things all the time, and I needed that to happen, and he wasn't up for that dream. So I said, it's okay. You could sit down for a second. I'm going to take the wheel. And you know what? I went and I built it myself. He is doing great. He's always done great. He's a lawyer. He did fine. But you know what? Living in LA, you can't make a few $100 grand. And living in LA, if you really want to be able to live and have a nice yard and send your kids to schools, you need to make more money. And you know what? There's no good reason not to, because I'm so grateful for the person I've become by making millions of dollars. It's not the millions of dollars. It's who I've gotten to become. It's the feeling of empowerment I can give to my 3 daughters, right? That is a necessity. That is not a luxury, right? We were talking last night, they were sitting around the table, and I said, I'm not interested in college, right? I'm interested if you are, but what I'm more interested in is you building a business. I need more women to be CEOs. Do you know how many women are CEOs? Do you know how many women are in places of leadership? We have big problems, okay? And when women are CEOs, do you know that the business makes 30% more revenue? Because women are good. Women are relationship beings. We understand this naturally. We allow other people to grow because we want to see other people step into their leadership, because that's what women do. They nurture potential. So this isn't up for discussion. This is not up for discussion. Now, I'm going to tell you something really cool. My team is here. I said, stick with me. So you guys know that we have this podcast program. I want you to understand something. We don't just teach you podcasting. There's a lot of classes that teach you podcasting. We teach you how to make money and profit from your podcast. Okay. That's the key part, because my podcast became the gasoline in the tank to grow all of my businesses, right? Once you have an audience, right? Audience is velocity. Audience is currency. It is the activator. It's like pouring rainwater on a flower. So having a place where you can build audience is humongo, right? Now, some of you are interested in learning podcasting, but I want you to understand podcasting becomes the marketing super generator tool. Everybody does marketing differently. Some people do marketing through funnels. Some people do marketing through Facebook ads. Some people do marketing through Pinterest. Great. Perfect. Whatever you want to do. For me, it's about engagement and intimacy and relationship building. That is what my podcast does. When you start a podcast and you put your authenticity out there, people want to be close. People want to work with you. Opportunities come to you. In fact, just yesterday, Jen wrote to me and said, and maybe she's on here, I don't know. She goes, the woman who's the editor of People Magazine just reached out because she loves your podcast and she wants to interview you. And I said, that is the proof of a podcast, because my own publicist, not to throw shade, she's a sweet person. We haven't gotten those magazines, right? It's literally a tool for people to get to feel like they are your best friend. So we used to do a 12-week program only for podcasting and take you from beginning to starting your podcast. The podcast program always has a platinum level for those of you who want to be scaling and working on the monetization. But the program itself teaches you how to grow a business, because your podcast, we talked about this last week, ultimately, the best way to monetize your podcast is to send your listeners to your business. The things you make, the things you serve, the things you sell, the things that you do for people, that is really what it does for you. So we've now created that this 12-week program is 12 months. So in the 12 months of coaching, we're working on getting your podcast out there, which is your lead generator, right? Which is your audience builder. And then from there, I'm coaching you. So if you want me as your coach, we've always done 3 months. Now, the same cost of the 3 months is 12 months. And if you want to do platinum, you get what's called splash zone seats with me. And that's for people who've already built a business or already have a podcast and you're into scaling. You're at a place where you're ready to scale and you want to get that one-on-one time with me. That's what happens in platinum. But either way, it's 12 months of coaching. The other thing, though, is this. I said on Sunday, that for those of you who came on Sunday, I wanted to gift everybody with this other program we have called Boldly Abundant, which teaches women financial literacy, which teaches you how to know your way around compound interest and investing, because as you make money, every dollar you make should turn into $5. If you love Warren Buffett, which you should, because he's absolutely adorable, he is the same person he's been since he was 8 years old. He's never changed, no matter how many billions he has. He said that what he learned at 12 is that one nickel can turn into 10 nickels. It's called compound interest. Every single person needs to stop saying you don't understand this and start learning it. You can't be on your phone 3 hours a day and tell me that you have a good excuse for not being financially literate. I sit with my 3 daughters and I want them to understand money. It's not okay to say, talk to my husband. Are you effing kidding me? In 2024, please don't tell me to talk to your husband. Why don't you know it? And why do you think he's good at it? What are you talking about? Women are good with money. It actually shows that when money is in the hands of a woman, women become stewards of that money. They become philanthropic with that money, and they're good with it. You need to understand it. And I've had it with this. So yesterday we talked about, if you join this program, Your Turn to Podcast, we're going to gift you Boldly Abundant, which was a 3-month program. You're going to watch all the sessions. You're going to get started right away and you're going to love it. And for those of you who've never had Made to Do This, we're also going to gift you Made to Do This because it's 12 weeks of teaching you how to go from idea to income. However, what I do live with you for 12 weeks is help you grow that business. So what we do, and you should just know, those of you who've been in Made to Do This, we have everybody put out their offer and you get it into the world and you start charging for it. And it's scary as hell. And it feels so good when you do it. And people come back and like, oh my God, I just made my first $1,500. I'm like, and there we go. We've started, right? Like, and once you start, you don't stop. So we have had all of our cohorts and Made to Do This. We used to say, okay, once you put your offer out, you're going to go and plug in the total of how much you made. And when we do these cohorts, and some of you have been in them, in the 12 weeks of the cohort, that cohort made $249,000 collectively. Like, true story. People were literally there. We actually showed everybody's money that everybody made, because it's one thing to say, I can't do it. I don't have clarity. I don't have a business. I get it. I've heard it. It's really boring. It's an old song. But it's something else to say, oh, I'm doing it though. And I just did it. And I just tested something. And oh my God, I just tested 3 things. I tested a service I could do. So I'm organizing this person's home. And now the other thing I'm doing is I'm baking these gluten-free cupcakes. And then the other thing I'm doing is I'm teaching a class on how to meal prep for vegans. I just tested 3 things. And you know what, Kath? This thing made $150. This thing didn't do well at all. And this thing, surprisingly, I got 10 orders and I don't even know how I'm going to fulfill all those orders, which is what we've had people do. And then I say, great, now we're going to learn how to scale or make a product that doesn't require you to put in that much time, because trading time for dollars is not going to make you a millionaire, right? We have to be willing to sort of look at how we can grow the business. And this is what we're going to do for a year. Type a 1 in the chat if you were excited. So I want to give some stuff away. You guys have been super engaged. Let me tell you, tomorrow we're going to go deeper on how you start to grow that money. And we want to also talk about manifesting money. And this week, we're also going to talk about money blocks and how to undo them. Because I am telling you, if you have a friend who is single and she tells you all day long, she wants to get married, but she continues to be perpetually single, say that 15 times. There's unconscious bias against being in a relationship. And when you unconsciously have a block to relationships, it doesn't matter how cute the guy is. It doesn't matter if he's your best friend's cousin. It's not going to happen. Because if deep down relationships equal pain, you're not doing it. And when you have an issue with money, you won't let yourself make money and you won't let yourself charge money. Because if deep down you are hardwired in, where your nervous system literally feels that money equals some version of judgment or shame or pain, you will not let yourself make money. And that has to be discarded. And so in the course of 12 weeks, if you sign up for this program with me, right, and you get to decide, there's a lot of amazing people who can help you with things along my way. I've had lots of cool people who showed me about investing. I've had lots of cool people who taught me things about the online world or what I want to do with podcasting and how to make podcasts sensational. I sat down with Guy Raz, who hosts How I Built This. I've had mentors in my life, and you can find mentors. There's plenty of them. You don't need to have me as a mentor. But if you want to have me as a mentor, enrollment for this program ends on Friday, and I want people to understand what the program is. Podcasting is happening. Podcasting becomes your lead generator, audience builder. And then for 1 year, you have me as your coach, and we are going to help you build a business that's profitable. And you're going to set a big, sexy goal, and you're going to become an incredible leader. And you're going to become the kind of woman who never has to ask someone a question about what you can buy. And you're going to become the kind of person who never says, I can't afford that. Because in the time other people spent surfing the internet and looking at TikTok, you built a business. Type a 1 if you are excited to do that. You can go, if you want to claim these extra bonuses, you can go to kathyheller.com/join and join in. If you already joined us, then you're also going to get that. In addition, I want to give the first 20 people who do this today a free ticket to our live event, which is absolutely amazing. And it happens in November and in May, and you can choose which one you want to come to, or you can watch virtually. Let's give away, for 5 people that have been on this call and been excited, let's give them 5 different, we're going to give each of them Beats headphones. They can pick which color they want. and let's give each of them $25 to Starbucks. Tomorrow, I'll be giving away more stuff. You guys, can you tell how much I love helping women start businesses? It literally, I don't think there's anything more fun. I posted yesterday that my favorite sport is watching women remember who they are and then become the fierce version of themselves. Watching women make money is the best sport possible. And I will tell you this is what you're going to promise me. As soon as you step into the fierce version of you and you set down this other version of you, I want you to help one other woman to do that too. And this is how we change the world, right? You want to vote? Vote with your life. Vote with your life, right? Be a person who leaves a legacy, right? Everyone on my team is a woman, right? And we're all different, right? Ezgi lives in Istanbul. She's been with me for 4 years. Emma, she's half Japanese, half Chinese. She lives in Pasadena. She's about this big. I could fit her in my pocket, right? Jen and she grew up in the Midwest. She lives in Oregon. And all the women, Lindsay, who helps us with advertising, my PR person, the head of my editor at Simon & Schuster is a woman. They're all girls, right? But at the end of the day, right, there are not enough seats yet at the table where we are able to make decisions freely, right? And I am telling you that when I was able to like take my kids, you know, to our house and show them like mommy bought, when we bought our first house, I remember my husband literally freaking out. We were on our way to Disney on Ice with the kids and he was freaking out and telling me that I was making such a big, you know, mistake and we can't afford it. And I was like, we got this. You're going to be okay. It's going to be all right. And it's amazing. My grandmother used to say to me, necessity is the mother of invention. And it's amazing because every time I've created a greater standard for us as a family, I rise to that standard. Jen Sincero, who's a friend of mine, she wrote the book, You Are a Badass, and all the other badass books. She was living in a garage eating cans of tuna fish at the age of 40. And she had no money. And she went with her friend. She went with her friend to get a car. She needed a new car. And she looked at every car. She looked at whatever the cheaper cars were. And okay, wasn't that excited about getting a Kia, wasn't that excited, fine. And then her friend says, let's go look at a fancy car. And she's like, well, I really like the Audi. So they go look at the Audi. And the Audi is $800 a month. And the other car was like $179 or something. They had like a deal. And the guy at the car dealership said, well, I just checked your credit. You have good credit. So I could sell you the Audi. You just have to make the payments. And they left. And her friend said to her, I think you're going to go back and get the Audi. Because if you have a payment that's $800 a month, maybe you will change. Maybe you'll have to change. You'll be forced to change. And so she did. And she got that car. She talks about it in her book, You Are a Badass. And she's like, what the hell did I just do? But next thing she knows, she's driving around and she feels like $1 million. And because she felt like $1 million, she changed the way she thought about things. And she's a writer, and she had always been a creative writer. She started helping people write. She started writing classes. She made a little bit of money. She moved out of that garage. And then she started to see that she was starting to feel better. So she started to write about all the self-help books that she used to roll her eyes at. And then she wrote You Are a Badass, which was her sort of like sassy girl guide to all the self-help books that nobody wants to read but should read. And she made so much money writing those books. In fact, that book sold like 6 million copies, and that's like insane because most books don't sell any copies. So there is something inside of us that has to be woken up, right? And once you wake it up, you won't remember how on earth you ever didn't have a big, sexy goal, or that you weren't taking the next steps. So tomorrow we're going to talk about what are the next steps, what are the first steps, and how do we make those steps feel doable? Because it's like I said, it would be one thing for me to say, I want you to go ski the Black Diamond, but you don't need to ski the Black Diamond. The first thing you're going to do is go to the bunny hill and just see if you can stand, what do they say, like 11, A11, like just stand in the skis. Like when you learn that starting a business begins with giving things away because you're testing something, we'll talk about it tomorrow. It's actually very exciting and empowering, and you don't feel scared. Now, I just want to say that we're also going to hear from, over the next few days, some of our amazing alumni who were nice of us to show up today. And those of you who are alumni who showed up today, and I know that we didn't get a chance to hear from you, I'm going to gift you guys with something because you're just so sweet. So I'm giving all of you, you can choose what color Beats headphones you want, and the 6 of you that Jen had, and we're going to make sure that you feel loved on and appreciated because I love you so much. Sometimes I just get carried away. I can't help it. Type a 1 if you feel like you learned anything today. Type a 2 if you're excited to build a business towards a big, sexy goal. And type a 3 if you believe enough in yourself to think that over the course of a year, you could build something that gives you a little bit of freedom and turns into something that is awesome. Because I know that you can, 100%. In fact, once you get started, like I said, all the yellow doors are going to pop open and you're going to build more things and you're going to enjoy it so much. So tomorrow we're going to come back and we're going to talk about building a business. If you sign up by midnight, you're going to get all these programs, Boldly Abundant, which is financial literacy and women understanding how to really know their way around money. That was a $3,000 program. You can have it. You'll go watch the recordings of it. You'll love it. And you can also have Made to Do This, which is just such a deep dive, fun, getting into the creative clarity of choosing your idea, choosing your business. But over the course of the 12 months of being with me in this program, it is live. It is not just information, it's the transformation. And some of you need to be in platinum, right? If you're alumni, you need to be in platinum. What we do in platinum is called splash zones. Splash zones is when you go to SeaWorld and you're sick of sitting in the back because you're ready to get wet. You need to be uncomfortable. If you're at a place where you've been thinking about this for a while and you have something started, but you need to scale it, you need to monetize it, you should be in platinum so that you get in the splash zone with me one-on-one, because I need to move you to a different place. Everybody else though, what you're going to get from the Q&As we do, from the coaching that we do, and from the very specific teaching that I'm going to teach you, you need it, right? You really need to sit back and start implementing one half step and another half step. And when you start just taking it one little step at a time, it's like my mom, she teaches piano. She starts out with people learning middle C. Eventually they're playing Fur-Elise. Eventually you're playing Bach and Beethoven, but you start with middle C, right? And then you don't get ahead of yourself. And literally she's like, if you just sit down and do it, you can learn it. And people are like, oh, I can't. No, you actually can. Your brain knows how to do it, right? This is easier than learning piano, and I think it's more fun. Don't tell her I said that. Anyway, come and join us. And also the first 25 of you who enroll today are going to get a free ticket to our event. Go to kathyheller.com/join. How many of you are coming back tomorrow? Type of 1. We are going to talk next about building this business, and we're going to talk about what are the next steps to building the business. And even if you are just here for these days, I hope that you'll walk away with notes and ideas and things that will change you for the better. And one thing that I would love is for you to come back tomorrow with a couple notes that you scribble down on what came to you when I said, if you're going to begin with the end in mind, what might you start to build? I want you to tell me what might you start to build, and what maybe one of your next steps would be. If your greatest resource is your resourcefulness, what would be your next step? Jen, are there any announcements or things that we need to touch on before we hop off?
Hi there. Yeah, nothing in addition to what you shared. We're just so excited for everybody to come back tomorrow and be here for another fire day. Was this just not so inspiring? So good.
It's so good, you guys. It's so inspiring. That big, sexy goal. I want you to hold on to this because we're going to keep putting things on this piece of paper tomorrow.
And also Made to Do This. My face was not on camera for that announcement, but it looked just as shocked.
Can we announce the winners?
Oh, we can announce the winners. Yes, very important. Very important. So we have winners of Starbucks gift cards as well as Beats headphones. So let me pop those in here for us. Kathy, do you want to read them?
Sure.
Okay. Pause the chat, everyone, so we can see our winners. And I'm entering it now.
We're going to do more winners tomorrow. So for Beats headphones, Angela Renee Cox, Emma Romano, Jessica Jacobs, Angie Lisowski. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Pam Sandrock, and $25 Starbucks goes to Carrie Lynn McKelvey, Britt, the chat is moving, Britt Ward, Catherine, the chat is moving, Proudy, Charlotte Jukes, and Rebecca Johnson. I will be giving away more stuff tomorrow. I might be giving away a pair of Prada sunglasses. I might be giving away a Marc Jacobs bag tomorrow. You know why? Because it's just so freaking fun. And I want you guys to treat yourself. I'm so sick of women who just live in the same place in their brains. Like, you're extraordinary, you're talented, you're smart, get it. Like, every one of you, by the end of this week, no matter what, you should be investing at a little bit on an app in the stock market. Like, enough. What are you doing? You're spending crap at Target you don't need. There should be $100 going into the stock market. Like, enough already. Come on, let's go. Let's get the money in. Let's get the money. Let's go. So there's lots that we need to unpack and talk about, but I've just had it, right? I need you guys to be at a place where you're enjoying what it is to be alive, right? Which is your potential, okay? And turning all the lights on, like, oh, the Christmas tree's lit up, right? I'm excited. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thank you to my team. I'll see you guys